week, the artist on artists, or no, sorry, this week, actors on actors segments started coming out from Variety. And one of the ones that just dropped is Jennifer Lawrence talking to Viola Davis. And she started talking about how her biggest hindrance to her craft, to acting, is doing press. She absolutely hates it because she feels that after dropping out from middle school, she's always felt self-conscious about the way that she comes across intellectually in her interviews. This is what she said. She said, "I'm supposed to be a mirror. I'm supposed to be a vessel. I shouldn't be someone you remember from an interview." And I think this is really interesting because it's like she's one of those like artists that like, dropped on the scene and just like had so many like authentic moments being an actor. And so for her to say that she hates that aspect of her, of her job is really interesting. And it really falls in line with what I'm seeing as a trend of celebrities kind of opting out of going to like traditional outlets like, Variety. Here it's like, it's different because she's talking to another celebrity, right? But that's why we've seen the rise of, celebrity podcasts like Amy
Mhm.
Poehler, right? Like that one is huge these days. And then we're also seeing the podcasts that have like flipped over to be like celebrity vehicles, like Hot Ones, Call Her Daddy, The Chicken Shop Date. And the reasons I think that this is happening is because you're getting lower stakes questions, right? Like nobody's asking her about the lawsuit or about being,
Mhm.
the director that was like her boyfriend who was like kind of, they had like, there was drama there. Then there's also the fact that the interviewer knows the space a little bit more, right? Like I'm seeing like whenever Amy Poehler is having discussions with like Matt Damon and, Tom Holland, she's really talking about the industry like she knows it because she
Mhm.
was a part of it, right? And you're getting more insights into like their life beyond just like, or you're getting more insights into the acting because those are the questions that they know how to bring out. The other thing is that their guard comes down, right? Like you're talking to someone that you feel is a peer as opposed to a journalist. We saw this week as well with Emmy Rossum talking to Alex Cooper of Call Her Daddy, right? Like there are so many things that I learned about what she thinks about motherhood and her career that probably wouldn't have come out otherwise. And then I think just the dual star amplification, where a traditional press, like they're starting to lose views. That's just kind of how it's been happening. Whereas now, celebrity podcasts, you have someone that already has their, audience that they can, promote their show to. And then you have, the stars audience that wants to learn more about, their life and their career. So, Brianna, would love to know your thoughts on just like this idea. I know that you saw a couple of these like clips
Mhm.
come out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was also gonna say, like, Hot Ones or the My Last Meal. I've definitely seen an
Hmm.
uptick in those, and I agree. I think there is something just more organic about it that p people connect with. I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of times when you watch the interviews with the press, you can kinda see on the celebrities' faces that they have been asked that same question 100 times
Yeah.
that day. It's not a lot of, like, new and exciting things.
Yeah.
And we as consumers also feel that, like, the people
Hmm.
watching it, we're like, "Okay, I've heard the answer to this question."
Yeah.
When you get to these other platforms like Hot Ones and Call Our Daddy, they come up with very unique personal questions
Hmm.
that for their audience, which then
Right.
becomes really interesting, and we get to know the celebrities at a different level than I think we typically ever have.
Hmm.
And I know Jennifer Lawrence doesn't wanna she wants to focus on the work and some of what she talked about, but we almost connect more, I feel like. Like, now that whether it was her interview or I've been seeing a lot of everything going on with The Odyssey, which we will talk about with
Hmm.
Nolan,
Yeah.
and Enola Holmes, with Millie Bobby Brown. I just feel more connected. It makes me
Yeah.
want to watch and see their work more now when I understand where they're coming from as a person. And from a marketing perspective, like, not even just for celebrities, but I think when you come at it from a more natural place and you're talking about truly what you're dealing with, you're not trying to be the coolest person on the block or anything like
Yeah.
that. You are really trying to get just, this is who I am and this is, where I come from and what I do. People just connect more. It's honest. It's not trying to be a sales pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you bring up the Odyssey tour
Mhm.
because, we talked about that here where the fact that he wasn't going to have influencers there made it it kind of flipped the script, right? Because it's like now we're gonna have like actual movie critics, people that know the space, know
Mhm.
about movies. And I thought that that was a perfect fit for that because that's the type of movie that you're trying to create,
Mhm.
right? Like, and you would get better press from that, where it's like we're talking about the narratives of the Odyssey and like the themes and like more of a intellectual side of things.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
certainly what we've been seeing from those interviews. So I think there definitely is a time and place for, journalists to like come out and talk about that. What I'd say is different with that is that that's focused on the movie and then the
Mm.
celebrities as, talking about the movie itself. They're not really talking about themselves and like their
Mhm.
personal lives as we're seeing with like both Spider-Man and The Odyssey, seeing Zendaya and
Mhm.
Tom Holland kind of have to promote themselves. One of the biggest differences I saw is that with the Spider-Man tour, they were asked a lot more about their personal relationship,
Mhm.
about being married, and just all these things that, like, you know, it really seems like they don't want to have to talk about?
No, they're
Whereas
very
for,
private. Yeah, they're
yeah,
very,
right?
very private.
And then for the Odyssey, it was like we're talking about like I mean one of the ones that really stuck out to me was that how Tom Holland he was being interviewed with Anne Hathaway
Mhm.
and they ask him about like, have you had a moment kind of like the Odyssey where it's like you're kind of thrown into things and just have to like, find your way out. And, he gave like this really interesting story about like what it felt like to film on IMAX, which is
Mhm.
completely
I
different
saw that.
from digital cameras.
Mhm.
And then how he felt that being thrown into it, like from the beginning, to have to prove that he's like as good of an actor as like he feels, as opposed to, I feel like he gets a lot of flack for, I
Mhm.
mean, his main vehicle kind of being the Spider-Man, right? And is that
Yes.
really an acting challenge? And I feel like this has elevated him a lot more because he's, being talked along, the same lines as, Matt Damon, Robert
Mhm.
Pattinson, who is like, similar generation, who's like known as like an actor's actor? So I thought it was like a great way for him to like, show his like acting chops. And that's certainly come out a lot more than it did for the Spider-Man tour.
I think that's a great point of specifically it's when to use the right message and ask
Hmm.
the right questions in the right place. It's not always that every one of these questions that whether it's press or it's someone like Hot Ones or as a marketer, whatever channel we're using, it's
Hmm.
not always the same thing in every
Right.
place. You really do have to make sure that it makes sense to be asking a certain type of question in an official press interview versus you can get, some crazy fun ones and other things.
Yeah, I want to bring up this point that you also made earlier about in podcasts, you're able to have questions that filter for that specific audience, right? So, one of the reasons I'm calling out that Emmy Rossum Call Her Daddy interview was because she was able to talk about her asking for a raise, right? And like
Mhm.
really trying to get, paid what she's worth. And she kind of like really, went into how she saw it from like her perspective of like, I've been working on this show, and the first time that I asked for like a raise to be, at the same level as William Macy, they told me no. So by the time season 5 rolled around and they wanted 2 more years from me, I knew that like at that point I had them, right? And it was very interesting because it's like at the time, I don't know if you remember this, but she was getting a lot of like flack being like, "Oh, here's, another woman like asking for more money, like does she
Yeah.
really deserve it?" And she mentioned within it that one of the reasons why she ended up getting the raise was because people were on her side and were like, yeah, why isn't she getting paid as much as William H. Macy, who like, isn't even on the show that much. She's like acting, she's directing, she's writing, she's doing all this like work. And at that point had become, the number one on the call
Mhm.
sheet. So it made more sense for her to, be getting paid the same amount. And then they, dropped that, Alex Cooper had just talked to Ellen Pompeo, who had gone through like a
Mhm.
similar thing, right? And I thought it was like, she hadn't ever been able to tell this story from her perspective, whether, that's because she didn't want to or the journalist didn't bring it up. So the fact that she is able to talk about that because Call Her Daddy is known to be, mostly a podcast for women who want to know
Mhm.
about these things, are interested in these topics, right? She got to talk more about her relationships and her both like the good and bad. There's just a lot more information that never would have gotten,
Mhm.
out if it weren't for this, specific interview. And like I saw, that clip and I'm like, wait, I actually want to hear like the full conversation. So then I went and like listened to it. So I really think like that's a huge thing that like podcasts now have as like their main draw, is that like you can have conversations and take them in directions that never would have happened with regular journalists. And I think part of the thing is that journalists have to get like a general overview of like what's
Mhm.
happening. So it's just like we're just doing like a generalized interview about the star and like, the movie, and they don't have time to go on a tangent unless it's like, something like specific to like that journal. But with podcasts, like you have more time to do that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things now where it's like that is a huge draw for celebrities that can talk about the things that they want to talk about in a way that makes them look better than it would with a journalist.
That is a great point. I mean, definitely. I mean, you always hear they're like they run them through
Hmm.
those like press junkets, like they're just one
Right.
after another, and they only have a limited amount of time.
Hmm.
But yeah, the audience, I mean, I saw a similar, to Emmy Rossum. It was, again, Millie Bobby Brown for the Enola Holmes
Hmm.
press tour. And it was similar. It obviously was targeted to me as a woman, that specific clip and interview. But yeah, it was about her experience actually on like Stranger Things and
Hmm.
her experience as the main girl and compared to her male fellow actors and like how her experience was. And like, again, we just connect with them in a different way
Yeah.
that I think as their brand, like I would want to follow and see more of her work or any
Hmm.
actor's work when I like get to connect with them more. Like, as I'm watching the movie,
Totally.
I know them a
Hmm.
bit, even though I don't.
Yeah.
And I want to see the work that they do because I realize they have all of this knowledge and history and everything behind them that is just fascinating.
Definitely agree. Okay, so one lesson for me is that the dual star model is compounding their reach, both for the celebrity host and the celebrity guest. What I'm seeing here is that with traditional celebrity press, it's more of a hub and spoke, where it's like the celebrity
Mhm.
is in the middle, and then all like the journals are spokes. Whereas with a celebrity podcast, it's more of a network model, where it's like you have the two stars, the two audiences, and you have the one conversation that attracts both of their audiences. And the math is just better for both of them. And I think celebrities are, finally coming around to the fact that, like, oh, this is a lot easier. It's more fun, and I get a lot more out of it. And that's a huge reason why we've seen, Steven Spielberg go on to, podcasts for the first time. Leonardo DiCaprio going on for like the first time. I totally expect more celebrities to be going direct to podcasts instead of trying to do, traditional press. Another one here is that while the authenticity is engineered, it's not accidental, right? Like you're
Mhm.
still getting real celebrity moments from the conversations because you're learning more about them in a context they're actually comfortable with. And I think that's completely fine, right? I think we went down a road where it's like we're trying to do a lot of gotcha interviews with celebrities about like
Mhm.
political stuff or like, stuff in their personal life that was drama that we knew would be clickbait, instead of realizing that they're human beings just like us, and there are things that they're comfortable talking about and there are things that they're not comfortable talking about, and that's an okay boundary for them to have. And now they're also figuring out that if I go direct to Amy Poehler and she's asking me questions, she's not going to ask me, really
Yeah.
embarrassing questions about myself and like, things I don't want to talk about. And the last one is that control is a real variable. It's not that Lawrence hates exposure. I mean, clearly,
Mhm.
she's doing these, she's doing the press, she's doing like the hot ones, she's going viral. She's become memes several times now.
Mm. Yes, yes.
So it's like it's not that she hates, the attention. It's more that she hates losing control of how she's being
Mhm.
perceived. And you know what? Fair enough, because like we're even seeing that on the tech side of things, where we just saw two. It's not a takedown, right? But the drama and controversy happening with Fia, who's Bill Gates's daughter. They're doing some, potentially fraudulent things, and like the press behind it is just like very, for me, there's a difference between going after them because yes, they're doing fraudulent things, but then also falling into the narratives of like, oh no, here's another like female CEO and like
Yeah.
co-founder who obviously has found herself in, trouble. Like, here we go again. And we saw that similarly with a Wired article about the
Mhm.
robot who with the fingers, where, the founder came out and said that he felt it was a little too sexual in nature
Mhm.
because of like what they were, talking about how like the fingers, right? And like, yeah, that was kind of a thing. But then also they are using some of their marketing to go in that direction. So like really who is it that the journalists are, calling attention to what they're talking about? Or is it that the journalists are trying to, have some sort of gotcha moment? The problem is that it benefits both of them. Like this is how you get clicks, this is how you get views. So the incentives are just different. Any lessons from you?
I would say, I mean, you mentioned just that authenticity. I think that's one of the biggest things. It just feels very natural and real. It doesn't feel like, again, selling the movie, selling anything. It feels like just connection.
Hmm.
And I think people are responding to that. I also think it is a bit of a generational thing that we're seeing as well. I mean, it's definitely the younger actors, not just saying they're younger, but
Hmm.
it's those who are older, who've been in the field for longer, are the ones that are just starting to tiptoe into this.
Hmm.
And I think it's because the younger actors who have really blown up know how to connect with their audience. This is the world that they grew up in. It's not,
Hmm.
it's a more natural thing for them. So that kind of speaks to you need to think about your audience. They understand that. I think just the younger generation, millennials and younger, are they actually kind of had marketing minds. They kind of
Yeah.
see like my audience, my following, things like that just come naturally to them.
Yeah, I want to throw in another example because Erling Haaland has basically taken over
Mhm,
both social media, the World Cup, and just soccer in general. And I think one of the biggest reasons is because he does that. He goes direct to his
mhm,
audience. He uses social media. He created a YouTube channel saying that the reason why he wanted to do it is because he wanted to have his fans see him as more human, right? And not just like a footballer. And, he has become very popular by, his humor, right? And I think one of the biggest reasons is because he's grown up in that sort of environment. Like he was a fan of like footballers. He
mhm,
knew what he wanted to get from, the people that he loved. And now he's using that to then, be that person for his fans. And so he's really shown that like he knows how to work his audience by giving them, behind the scenes type content that they're really looking for. And we're seeing that this similarly with celebrities of these younger generations. So that's definitely something for marketers to think about.
mhm,
Like, what are those behind the scenes moments that you can be having with your fans because they're there. They do want to interact with you, and they definitely want to know that there are humans working there, that you're authentic and you're not just a faceless, nameless brand that is just kind of trying to sell to
mhm.
them with every interaction that you have. Okay, we can move on to your topic.